Markandeya and his descendants. Markandeya says, Markandeya had a son named Manu. The seventh Manavanta in which we are living is named after him. Manu had many sons, among whom Narishant, Navad, Parishana and Drisht were the rulers of different kingdoms. Manu had performed a special yagya named Mitravaruna with the desire of having more sons. But after the yagya, a daughter was born to him and who was named Ila. Manu then requested Mitravaruna to transform that girl into a boy, if he was really pleased with him. Both the deities blessed Manu and instantly that girl was transformed into a boy. He was named Sudyumna. One day, Sudyumna had gone to the forest for hunting. Incidentally, because of the wrath of goddess Parvati, he again got transformed into a lady. At that time, he was married to Buddha and a son named Pururava was born to them. Later on, he regained his body of the male. This time, he became the father of Utkal, Vinay and Gaya. All these three sons were very just rulers. Pururava was made the king of Pratishthampur. Famous mythological tales. King Parish was the son of Manu. One day, he had gone to the forest on a hunting spree. He killed a cow by mistake. This cow belonged to an Agnihotri Brahman who was performing a yagya. The Brahman became very furious and cursed Parishana to become a Shudra. King Parishana too became angry and he wanted to retaliate. He took some water in his hand and was just about to curse the Brahman. Just then the Brahman's father Moili arrived. He warned both of them against cursing each other. He said, anger decreases the lifespan of a man. It also destroys the knowledge and makes a man destitute. An angry person can neither be virtuous nor he can accumulate wealth. Even if the king had killed the cow deliberately, he is worthy of being shown compassion. But if he has committed this sin out of his ignorance, then certainly, he is not fit to be cursed. Therefore, O son, don't curse the king. The cow must have died because of her own past karmas. King Parishana made salutations to the Agnihotri Brahman and said in a loud voice, be pleased on me. I did not kill the cow deliberately. It only happened by mistake. The Brahman replied, O king, I have never spoken a lie in my life. Even my curse which I have given to you will not go in vain. Sage Moili took his son to his hermitage. In course of time, Parishana became a Shudra due to the curse. Prince Navad. Markandeya says, Navad was the son of King Dishta. One day, he saw a beautiful woman who was the daughter of a Vaishya. He was very enchanted by her beauty and wanted to marry her. He went to the Vaishya and expressed his desire. The Vaishya was terrified at the prospect of facing the wrath of the king. He said, you belong to a royal family whereas I am a poor man. There is no match between both of us. Why do you insist on marrying my daughter? Navad was not amused at the Vaishya's reply. He threatened to give up his life if he was not married. The Vaishya went to the king and narrated the whole story. The king consulted his ministers and the Brahmans. The Brahman said, Prince Navad should first marry a woman within his own caste. Only then he can marry the Vaishya's daughter, otherwise he would be committing a grave sin. Navad was not satisfied by the Brahman's decision. He decided to forcibly abduct the Vaishya's daughter. The Vaishya went to the king and sought his help. The king gave death punishment to Navad. Hearing of this punishment, Navad went into hiding. The royal army went in search of him and finally found him. Then a tough battle was fought and ultimately, Navad was victorious. The king himself came forward to fight with Navad. As the battle was going on, sage Narada appeared and requested the king to stop fighting. He said, "O king, please stop this battle. Being a Kshatriya, it is not proper for you to fight a battle with a Vaishya, which your son has become after abducting a Vaishya girl. He is not entitled to fight with you." Curse of Sage Pramti Markandeya says, the king stopped fighting at the request of Narada. Navad married the Vaishya girl. After the marriage, the king ordered Navad to follow a Vaishya's occupation. Navad got engaged in activities like animal husbandry and agriculture. With the passage of time, a son was born and who was named Balandin. When he grew up, his mother entrusted him the job of looking after the cows. Balandin knew nothing about the job he was entrusted with. He went to Sage Neep and told his problem. Sage Neep understood everything and taught him the nuances of handling various weapons, as a result of which, he became a master in this art. After this, Balandin went to Vasurat, the son of Pitravya, and demanded his share in the kingdom of his great-grandfather. Vasurat refused to give anything by saying, "Being the son of a Vaishya, you are not entitled to become a king." Balandin became very angry and attacked Vasurat with a huge army. In this battle, Vasurat was defeated. Now, Balandin had control over the entire earth. He returned to his father, Navad, in order to hand over the reign of the kingdom he had won in the battle. But Navad refused to take anything by saying, "I have been cursed by my father to become a Vaishya. I cannot go against his wishes by taking over the responsibility of a king, as this would disturb the peace of my ancestors who are in heaven, and even I would not attain liberation. The second thing is that you have won this kingdom by your power and strength. It will not be proper for me to rule over this kingdom." Suprabha, the wife of Navad, was listening to their conversation. She could not stop laughing. She said, "You are not a Vaishya, because I too belong to a Kshatriya family." During ancient times, a king named Sudev had a friend, Nala. One day both of them went to the forest to hunt. In the forest, Nala saw Sage Pramti's wife and became enchanted by her immense beauty. He wanted to marry her and tried to forcibly abduct her. Being a chaste woman, Pramti's wife started shouting for help. Sage Pramti heard her screams and arrived at the site. He became enraged when he saw Nala trying to abduct his wife and King Sudev doing nothing to protect her. Pramti requested King Sudev to protect his wife from Nala. King Sudev lied to Sage Pramti about his caste, to help his friend Nala. He said, "I cannot help you because I am a Vaishya. You must go to any Kshatriya to take help." Sage Pramti was exasperated. He fumed, "You will certainly become a Vaishya, as you have lied to me about your caste." Balandin and Vatsapri Navad told his wife, "I would never accept the kingdom for the second time, which I had relinquished at the instruction of my father." He then instructed his son to rule over the kingdom he had won. Following his father's instructions, Balandin started ruling over his kingdom. Later on, he got married and begot a son named Vatsapri. Vatsapri was married to Sonanda when he attained youthhood. Vatsapri married her after killing the demon Kujrimba. There was a king named Vidurath. He had two sons whose names were Suniti and Sumti. One day, while Vidurath was having his usual walk, he saw a large pit. He became very curious. Just then, a sage arrived at the scene whose name was Suvrat. Pointing his finger towards the pit, the king asked Suvrat as to what it was. The sage said, A demon by the name of Kujrimba lives inside this pit. He controls all the events which occur on this earth and in heaven. He possesses a make called Sunan and which was made by Vishwakarma. This large pit which you see is the result of the assault he made with his make. This demon is very cruel and wicked. He torments the deities and destroys the oblation sites of the sages. There is one very peculiar characteristic related with his make. The make would become powerless if touched by a woman. But this is only a temporary change because it regains its power the next day. But this fact is unknown to the demon. After saying this, sage Suvrat went on his way. King Vidurath returned to his palace and consulted his ministers. His daughter, Mudwati, was listening to their conversation. One day, the demon abducted Mudwati. The king sent both his sons accompanied by a huge army to bring her back, but the demon defeated them. The king made a declaration that he will marry his daughter to anybody who brings back his daughter and sons from the clutches of the demon. Hearing his declaration, Vatsapri came to Vidurath and said, "Give me your permission. I will bring back your daughter and your sons after releasing them from the clutches of the demon." Vidurath gave the permission. Vatsapri entered into the netherland through that large pit. A tremendous battle ensued between him and the demon. This battle continued for 3 days. On the final day of the battle, the demon tried to take the help of his make and went to grab hold of it. But sensing that the demon was going to pick up the make, she immediately touched the make, as a result of which it became powerless. Being unaware of this happening, the demon attacked Vatsapri with that powerless make. But he could not harm Vatsapri. Ultimately, Vatsapri was successful in killing the demon. Vatsapri released all 3 of them, Suniti, Sumti and Mudwati, from the demon's captivity and brought them back to the king's palace. After the death of the demon, Sheshnag acquired the make. Mudwati's name was later changed to Sunanda, after that make. King Vidurath became very pleased and married Mudwati to Vatsapri. The kingdoms of Pranshu, Prajti and Khanitra. Markandeya says, Sunanda gave birth to 12 sons. Their names were Pranshu, Pravir, Shur, Suchakra, Vikram, Krama, Bala, Balak, Chand, Prachand, Suvikrama and Swarup. After growing up, Pranshu became the king. Pranshu had a son named Prajti. Prajti had 5 sons, among whom Khanitra was one of them. Khanitra became a mighty king and was very famous for his religiousness and virtuosity. He distributed the kingdoms among his brothers. Shauri was made the king of the eastern region, Urdvasu of the southern region, Muni of the western region, while Maharti was made the king of northern region. One day, a minister of Shauri, Vishwavdi, instigated him against his brother Khanitra by saying, "O king, you must try to capture your brother's kingdom, as your kingdom is too small for your descendants to rule over. A time may come when your descendants would be forced to choose agriculture as their occupation, because the continuous distribution of your kingdom among your progenies would leave almost nothing for them." Shauri said, "My brother is so kind to me. Why should I cheat him like that?" The minister said, "The duty of the king is only to look after the kingdom's interest. The relation should not come in the way." At last, the minister was successful in convincing him. After some time, the wicked minister also influenced the rest of his brothers. Ultimately, King Khanitra was left all alone, as all of his ministers and even his sons were misguided by Vishwavdi. Vishwavdi appointed 4 priests of Khanitra as the supervisor of yagyas. One day, while the priests were performing yagya, 4 ogresses appeared from the sacrificial fire and tried to attack King Khanitra. but they could not harm him because of his virtuous character. They then turned towards Vishwavdi and the priests and killed all of them. Thus, Vishwavdi bore the fruits of evil deeds. King Khanitra Markandeya says, people present at the oblation site were shocked to see the dead bodies of Vishwavdi and the 4 priests. When Khanitra got this news, he too was shocked. Khanitra went to Vasishta and asked him the reason about the deaths of his brother's minister and the 4 priests. Vasishta revealed the conspiracy hatched by Vishwavdi to kill him. Khanitra, in a sad tone, said, "Shame on me, as I have been the cause of the death of the Brahmins. Had I not taken birth as a human being, my brother's priests won't have died. I am the real culprit. What should I do now? Where should I go?" The remorseful Khanitra decided to relinquish his kingdom and go to the forest to do penance so that he could get liberated from the grave sins of causing death to the Brahmins. He went to the forest accompanied by his 3 queens after appointing his son Kshub as the king. He did a severe penance for 350 years. After that, he died because of his bad health. All the 3 queens died too and went to heaven along with him. King Vivimsha Markandeya says, King Kshub ruled justly in the same way as his father Khanitra did. Kshub's wife was Pramantha. They had a son who was handsome and mighty. He had defeated all the kings and annexed their kingdom. He was married to Nandini, the princess of Vidarbha. Nandini gave birth to a son who was named Vivimsha. Vivimsha was a very mighty king. During his reign, the earth had become very populated. The enemies of King Vivimsha were very afraid of him, but his subjects were satisfied by his just rule. King Vivimsha had performed numerous yagas, and after ruling for a long time, he attained martyrdom while fighting a battle. King Khanitra Markandeya says, Khanitra was the son of King Vivimsha. He was very brave and valiant. The Gandharvas had proclaimed that no one could match Khanitra's benevolence, who had donated the whole earth after accomplishing 10,000 yagyas. Khanitra had given so much wealth as donations to the Brahmins that there was no need for them to take donations for the rest of their lives. Khanitra was sonless. One day, he went to the forest to hunt an animal for sacrificial purpose needed during Pitra Yagya. The performance of this yagya was supposed to bless him with a son. In the forest, he saw a deer that was cognizant of his desire. The deer requested him by saying, "O king, you can get my flesh by killing me." The king was very amazed. He asked the deer as to why it was willing to get sacrificed. The deer replied, "O king, I don't have any offspring. For this reason, I consider my life as useless." While the conversation was going on between the king and the deer, another deer came near them and expressed his desire to get sacrificed by saying, "O king, please kill me and get the flesh, because the flesh of this sonless deer would be of no help to you." The king was astonished. He asked the second deer as to why he was willing to die. The second deer replied, "O king, I have numerous sons and daughters, and this worries me a lot. Whenever my children go out in search of food, I become very anxious till they have returned to me safely. This way, I pass the whole day and night in anxiety." The king was very confused. He said, "I don't know who is superior between a sonless person and a person who doesn't have any son. Although I needed the flesh for the accomplishment of Pitra Yagya, but now after meeting both of you, I have become confused. It is true that a man has to face all kinds of sorrows because of their children, but yet, a sonless man is not complete and remains indebted. So, I have decided to get a son by doing a penance just like my predecessors did in the past. Karandam Markandeya says, King Khanitra went at the bank of the river Gomti and started doing a severe penance to please Indra. After being pleased by his devotion and eulogy, Indra appeared before him. He said to Khanitra, O king, I am very much pleased by your devotion. Demand anything you wish. The king replied, O Lord, if you are really pleased with me, then bless me with a religious and virtuous son because I am a sonless person. Indra blessed him by saying, So be it, and then disappeared. Khanitra returned to his palace. In course of time, a son was born to him. He named the child Balashva. When Balashva grew up, he became the king after the death of his father. He annexed many kingdoms after defeating his enemies and imposed taxes on them. After some time, his enemies not only stopped paying him the taxes but also regrouped themselves and recaptured their lost territories. Balashva had become weak due to the constant battles. He had only the capital city in his possession and had lost the other territories. One day, his enemies surrounded his capital. Balashva became restless as he would be no match for his enemies. In a sorrowful mood, he heaved deeply, covering his face by both his hands. The exhaled air resulted into the manifestation of numerous valiant fighters, chariots, elephants and horses. Very soon, this huge army covered the whole area. This army battled under the leadership of Balashva. Ultimately, the enemies were defeated. Later on, King Balashva became famous as Karandam because of the huge army, which had manifested from between both the trembling hands of Balashva. King Avikshit, birth of Avikshit and abduction of Vashalini. Markandeya says, Shubhrat, the daughter of Viryachandra, had decided to marry Karandam. A son was born to them who was named as Avikshit. The astrologers had predicted a very bright future for him. Avikshit learned lessons in handling all kinds of weapons from the son of Kamban. In a very short time, he attained mastery in the art of weaponry. Vara, Gauri, Subhadra, Neva, Leelavati, Manyavati and Kumridvati had chosen Avikshit as their husband in a Swayamvara. Avikshit had also forcibly married numerous other women. Once, a Swayamvara was conducted in the palace of the king of Vishal for his daughter Sudeti Vashalini. Avikshit was present in the Swayamvara. But Sudeti, due to her arrogant nature, did not choose Avikshit as her husband. Hence, he forcibly abducted her by defeating the other kings. The fact that a single man had defeated all of them had made the other kings ashamed of themselves. All of them decided to fight Avikshit unitedly. They picked up their arms and marched towards Avikshit with a huge army. Avikshit defeated, liberation and disenchantment. Markandeya says, a ferocious battle ensued between Avikshit's army and the other kings. Both sides fought bravely and Avikshit managed to kill many of the kings but was outnumbered and got severely wounded. Avikshit was finally made captive. Avikshit and Sudeti Vashalini were brought to the king of Vishal. The king instructed Sudeti Vashalini to choose any king as her husband, but she refused this offer. The king then requested his astrologer to choose an auspicious day for her marriage. The astrologer said to the king, O king, the present time is not auspicious for marriage, but don't worry, very soon, the princess would get married at the advent of the most auspicious moment. When King Karandam came to know about his son's defeat and captivity, he consulted his friends. All of them decided to attack the kingdom of Vishal and release Avikshit from captivity. Karandam marched towards the kingdom of Vishal followed by a huge army. A tremendous battle was fought for 3 days. Karandam became victorious in this battle. At last, Avikshit was rescued from his captivity. King Vishal decided to marry his daughter with Avikshit, but Avikshit was disillusioned with life. He said to Vishal, "I can never accept such a woman as my wife who has witnessed my defeat. I have decided to renounce life. So, it would be better if you marry your daughter with somebody else." King Vishal asked his daughter to choose any other king as her husband, as Avikshit was not willing to marry her. But the princess wanted to marry Avikshit and believed that he still remained an undefeated king because he had fought single-handedly with all the kings. He was defeated only because of unfair means adopted by his jealous rivals in the battle. "I shall accept only Avikshit as my husband, otherwise I shall remain unmarried," said the princess. King Karandam requested his son to marry the princess, but Avikshit turned down even his father's request. Seeing the futility of his advice, Karandam returned to his kingdom. Avikshit too went along with him. Sudeti Vashalini went in the forest to do penance. She observed a fast for 3 months. She became very weak but still continued with her penance. The deities felt sorry at her condition. They sent an envoy to persuade her to discontinue with her penance. The envoy requested her to stop torturing herself. "You would be a mother of a Chaturvedi king who would be mighty and powerful," said the envoy. Sudeti Vashalini said, "How can I become a mother without a husband? I have decided that nobody except Avikshit will be my husband. But he has turned down my proposal. So, I have vowed to remain unmarried in this life." The envoy said, "O great soul, I have been asked not to reveal much. You must take care of your health. Due to the virtues of your penance, you will certainly become a mother." Sudeti following her instructions and broke her fast. Avikshit promises his father to get married. Markandeya says, "Once, Veera, the wife of King Karandam and mother of Avikshit, had taken a vow to accomplish a very arduous penance. But this could only be accomplished with Karandam's and Avikshit's assistance. Karandam had assured her that he would provide all the wealth required for the accomplishment of that austerity, while Avikshit had assured her of physical help. Veera commenced her arduous austerity named Kimichak Vrata. This particular vrata had a peculiar characteristic, and that was any demand made during the course of the vrata ought to be fulfilled at any cost, failing which meant forfeiting all the virtues of this arduous austerity. King Karandam was consulting his minister about the means that would change Avikshit's decision regarding his marriage. The ministers said that as Karandam had become old, there was an urgent need for his successor. The question was that who would become king after Avikshit, as he had decided to remain unmarried. This thought was tormenting all of them. Suddenly, King Karandam heard the priest who was assisting Queen Veera in the accomplishment of the Kimichak Vrata telling somebody, "The queen is busy performing the Kimichak Vrata. What is your demand? I promise, it will be fulfilled by the queen no matter how extraordinary it may be." Avikshit too arrived at the scene. He promised that their demands would be met without delay, as it was obligatory for the success of Kimichak Vrata, which his mother was performing. Seeing the time as opportune, King Karandam said before the people could say anything, "O son, I have a demand. Promise me that you will fulfill it." Avikshit gave his word. The king said that he aspired for a grandson, but this was impossible unless he, Avikshit, got married. Initially, Avikshit tried to convince Karandam that it was an impossible task, as he had vowed to remain a celibate, but ultimately he had to change his mind to honor his words. Avikshit rescues Vashalini. Markandeya says, once, Avikshit had gone for a hunt in the forest when suddenly, he heard a female voice shouting for help. He proceeded in the direction of the voice. After reaching there, he saw Dhanus, a demon, son Gridhakesha, holding a lady by her hair. The woman was crying, "I am the wife of Avikshit. This wicked demon is trying to abduct me." Avikshit was surprised as to how could the lady claim that she was his wife. He apprehended that it must be the illusionary tactics of the demon to trap him. But despite his apprehensions, he went near the wailing woman to release her from the clutches of that demon. He warned the demon of dire consequences if he did not release her. The demon left the woman and attacked Avikshit. A tremendous duel was fought. In the end, Avikshit severed the head of that demon. The deities were very pleased at Gridhakesha's death. They praised Avikshit for his bravery. They asked him to demand any boon. Avikshit demanded a valiant son for himself as per the aspirations of his father Karandam. The deities said, "You would get your son from this very woman you have rescued. The child would become a very mighty king after growing up." Being unaware of the real identity of Vashalini, he told the deities, "I had vowed to remain a bachelor but changed my decision only due to the word I had given to my father. But I cannot marry this woman because by doing so, I would be breaching the trust of that woman who wanted to marry me and who had rejected everybody for my sake." The deities then revealed to him that this lady was none other than Vashalini whom he was talking about. "She had done a severe penance to be your wife." After saying this, the deities disappeared. Vashalini requested him to accept her as his wife. "You have rescued me from this demon. I offer myself to you," said Vashalini. Avikshit marries Vashalini. Markandeya says, after Vashalini had finished her lines, Avikshit told her that he was forced to abandon her in the past after getting defeated, but once again, he had regained her after defeating the demon. Both of them decided to get married in the forest itself. Right then, a Gandharv, Tanaya, arrived there accompanied by many apsaras and revealed to Avikshit that Vashalini was his daughter in her previous birth. Because of the curse given to her by sage Agastya, she was born to the king of Vishal. Now you must accept her as your wife. Avikshit married Vashalini under the supervision of Tambaru, the priest of the Gandharvas. Both of them then accompanied the Gandharvas to the Gandharv Loka. There, Vashalini gave birth to a son. Knowing about the feats the child would accomplish in future, the Gandharvas celebrated his birth ceremony with great fanfare. After the birth ceremony, while Tambaru was eulogizing the child, everybody heard a heavenly voice, which said, "This child will become famous as Marut. He will become the ruler of all the Mahipals." Everybody was extremely satisfied by this forecast. King Marut ascends the throne. Markandeya says, after the birth of Marut, Avikshit accompanied by Vashalini returned to his father's palace. After making salutations to his father, he kept the newborn baby in his lap and told him that he had kept his word. Karandam became very pleased after seeing his grandson. In course of time, Marut grew up. He had mastered all the scriptures. He was also proficient in handling all kinds of weapons. There was nobody like him. Karandam had become old. He decided to go to the forest after making Avikshit the king, but Avikshit was not interested in becoming a king. He too wanted to go to the forest. He said, "The shame of the defeat still remains there. How can a person, who was not able to protect himself, protect his subjects?" Karandam tried his best to convince him to become his successor, but Avikshit was firm in his resolve. Finding no other option, Marut was made the king. Marut went to the forest and did penance for 1000 years. His wife did the same and went to live in sage Bhargava's hermitage. A hermit advises Marut on behalf of Veera. Krostuki asks Markandeya, "O Lord, we want to know more about Marut." Markandeya says, after becoming the king, Marut started ruling in a just manner. He performed many yajnas under the supervision of numerous yagikas and esteemed priests. Angira's son Samvat and Brihaspati's brother were his chief priests under whose supervision the yajnas used to be performed. Samvat had brought the peak of Munjavan mountain after uprooting it for Marut. King Marut's palace and the sacred oblation site were constructed on this very mountain peak. One day, a hermit said to Marut, "Your grandmother Veera is very tormented by the nuisance the serpents are creating around the sacred oblation site. She is very displeased by your negligence. The serpents have bitten 7 sons of a sage and have also polluted the water of the sacred pond. The sages have started making offerings to the serpents to please them, instead of paying attention on the performance of the yajnas. Although the sages are capable of destroying the serpents, yet they have decided against doing so, as this is not their job. This is the job of a king. A king should be aware of each and every event taking place in his kingdom. You are not aware of the misdeeds of the serpents because you don't have any detective to keep you informed of such events. Being a king, it is your duty to protect your subjects by punishing the wrongdoers. If you don't do this, then you will become a sinner. O king, your grandmother is very much concerned about your negligent attitude and wants you to act in a way befitting a king." The serpents take the refuge of Bhamini, Vashalini, Markandeya says. Marut was ashamed after hearing the sage's words. He cursed himself for his negligence. He picked up his bow and arrows in anger and went to the oblation site. When he reached there, he saw the dead bodies of 7 hermits lying on the ground. Being enraged, he picked up his most devastating weapon named Samvatak. The serpents became terrified as the tremendous amount of heat generated by this weapon had started to burn them. Unable to bear the tremendous heat caused by the weapon, the serpents took the refuge of Bhamini, Vashalini, the mother of Marut. Sometime in the past, Vashalini had promised to protect the serpents when in danger. Vashalini requested her husband Avikshit to persuade Marut against killing the serpents. Avikshit told her that the intensity of Marut's anger was a result of the grave sins committed by the serpents. "But for your sake, I will request him to pardon the serpents. If he still does not agree to stop killing the serpents, then I will have no option but to destroy his weapon Samvatak." After saying this, Avikshit picked up his bow and arrows and went to the oblation site accompanied by his wife. The hermit's sons become alive. Markandeya says, when Avikshit reached the oblation site, he found that the whole atmosphere was ablaze by the tremendous heat generated by Marut's weapon, Samvatak. He requested Marut to drop his weapon, but Marut refused by saying, "O father, these serpents are the culprits. They have killed the hermit's sons. They have also polluted the reservoir and caused obstacles in the accomplishment of oblation rituals. I am never going to forgive them." Avikshit told Marut that the serpents had taken his refuge and hence he should forgive them to protect the honor of his father's promise. When Marut did not listen, Avikshit picked up his weapon, Kal, to kill him. Marut inquired from him as to why he was trying to kill his own son, who was just performing his duty of protecting the oblation site from the serpents. Avikshit replied that he too was duty-bound to protect the serpents that had taken his refuge. When the sages saw both father and son were bent on killing each other, they intervened and advised them against killing each other. Right then, a sage came with the news that the serpents had agreed to make all the dead sons of the hermit alive. Thus, all the dead sons of the hermits became alive, and once again, the father and son were prevented from killing each other. From then onwards, Marut took proper care while ruling his kingdom. Later on, he married Sukesha, the daughter of Kekya, Sindravi, the daughter of Sindhuraj, Vayushmati, the daughter of Chediraz, etc. He had 18 sons from his wives, among whom Narishant was the eldest. King Narishant Markandeya says, among the 18 sons of Marut, Narishant was the eldest. Marut ruled over his kingdom for 70,015 years, after which Narishant succeeded him as the king. Marut went to the forest to do penance. After becoming the king, Narishant decided to perform a grand yajna, the like of which had never been accomplished by his ancestors. Narishant made such huge donations to the Brahmins that it was more than enough for their future generations to come. Once, Narishant decided to organize another yajna grander than the earlier one. But no priest was found to supervise it. At his repeated requests, some Brahmins agreed to supervise the yajna. But this particular yajna was unique of its kind because the Brahmins played the part of host as well as that of priests. The Brahmins made donations to the Brahmins who were acting as priests. In this grand yajna, crores of yajnas were performed in all the directions of the earth at one time. This grand yajna was possible only because of the wealth donated to the Brahmins by King Narishant. Narishant was such a religious and virtuous king. Narishant felt joyous that due to his donations, the Brahmins had become wealthy, and at the same time, he was also sad that his desire of performing a grand yajna was not going to be accomplished as the Brahmins no longer needed donations. Sumna chooses Dama as her husband. Markandeya says Dama was the son of Narishant. His mother was Indrasena, the daughter of Babru. He became the master in archery under the tutelage of Vrishbhava. He also learned the nuances of handling other kinds of weapons under the guidance of Dandugi. He learned the scriptures from sage Shakti and the art of yoga from a Shartishan. Sumna, the daughter of King Charusharma, had chosen Dama as her husband in a Swayamvara. But Mahanand, Vayushman and Mahadanu did not like her decision, as they too wanted to marry her. All three of them decided to abduct her by force and marry whoever among them she decided to marry with. Their evil intentions were corroborated by the friends of Dama. Thus, all three of them abducted Sumna. Dama became angry. He asked all the kings who were present in the Swayamvara, "Tell me whether Swayamvara is religious or irreligious." One of the kings said that certainly a Swayamvara is religious and only Dama has the right to marry Sumna as she had herself chosen him. But some other kings supported Dama's opponents. They said, Rakshas Vivah is the norm prevalent among people possessing arms. Only such a person has a right to marry Sumna who has defeated his rivals. Dama became furious with them. He knew that they were saying such things out of jealousy. But still he decided to accept their proposal. He threw an open challenge by saying, "Anybody who wants to die may abduct my wife in front of my eyes." A tremendous battle was fought between Dama and his opponents. At first, Mahanand came forward to fight him with a sword in his hand. Dhamma showered a volley of arrows at him. All the arrows were neutralized by Mahanand. After that, Mahanand jumped and climbed on the chariot of Dhamma. Dhamma severed his head. After the killing of Mahanand, Vayushman came forward to fight Dhamma, but his sword was broken into 2 pieces by the assault of Dhamma. Dhamma then killed his charioteer. After that, Vayushman picked up his spiked make, but Dhamma destroyed even this make. In the battle, Vayushman got injured and fell on the ground. Vayushman quit the idea of fighting. Seeing him reluctant to fight, Dhamma spared his life. At last, Charusharma married his daughter Sumna with Dhamma. After staying for some days at his father-in-law's place, Dhamma returned home accompanied by his wife Sumna. Killing of Narishant. Markandeya says, when the newly married couple Dhamma and Sumna returned to the capital, King Narishant was extremely pleased. King Narishant, after knowing about the brave deeds of his son, was very proud of him. As he had become old, he appointed Dhamma as his successor, and he went in the forest to do penance accompanied by his wife Indrasena. Once, Vayushman came in the same forest where King Narishant was doing his penance. After seeing Narishant and his wife, he inquired as to who they were. But King Narishant did not give any reply as he was observing a Mauna Vrata. Somehow, Vayushman came to know about his identity, that he was none other than the father of his bitter enemy Dhamma. He felt that this was the most opportune moment for him to take his revenge and killed Narishant. Indrasena, on seeing her dead husband, started to wail. All the sages and hermits who were doing penance in that forest arrived there and started cursing Vayushman for the grave sin he had committed. Indrasena requested one of the sages to go and inform Dhamma about his father's death. She said, "Go and tell him that his father Narishant has been killed by Vayushman while he was doing penance. Now, it was his duty to avenge his father's death." After saying this, Indrasena committed sati by jumping into the burning pyre of her husband. King Dhamma kills Vayushman. Markandeya says, when Dhamma came to know about his father's death, he became extremely furious. Although he was very patient by nature, but still the news of his father's death made him restless. He thought, shame on me. In spite of myself being alive, the wicked Vayushman had killed my father. I have failed in my duty. Being a king, it is my duty to punish the wicked people and protect the virtuous ones. But my enemy is still alive after committing a heinous crime. Now, I will perform my father's tarpan only with the blood of Vayushman. If I fail in doing this, then I would give up my life by jumping into the fire. I will not only kill Vayushman but also his whole family. Whoever tries to help him will be put to death. Even if the deities, Yam or Kuber, try to help him, they will get destroyed. Markandeya says, after taking a vow to kill Vayushman, Dhamma consulted his priests and ministers on his future course of action. All of them unanimously decided that Vayushman must be punished for his crime. At last, Dhamma marched along with a huge army towards Vayushman's kingdom. When Vayushman came to know of Dhamma's arrival, he became very angry. The battle commenced. The chief commander of Vayushman's army attacked Dhamma but was killed by Dhamma. Seeing his chief commander dead, Vayushman tried to flee from the battlefield with his army. Seeing him flee, Dhamma challenged Vayushman. Vayushman accepted Dhamma's challenge and turned back to fight again. A ferocious battle was fought. In a very short time, Dhamma killed all the 7 sons of Vayushman, his brothers, relatives and his friends. Vayushman was extremely angry at the death of his near and dear ones, and he attacked Dharma with his sword. But Dharma, pulling Vayushman by his hair, felled him on the ground and put his feet on his neck, saying, "I am now going to pierce the heart of this wicked and mean man. All the deities, human beings, sages etc. should witness this scene." Saying this, Dharma killed Vayushman. Blood started to ooze out from the wound inflicted on Vayushman's heart. Dharma tried to drink that blood but was desisted from doing so by the deities. Then Dharma performed the last rites of his father with that blood. In this way, he took his revenge. The benefits of reading Markandeya Purana. The birds said, "O Gemini." This was the way sage Markandeya had narrated the divine tales to Krostuki. A person who either studies this Purana or listens to it achieves great accomplishment. All his desires are fulfilled and he enjoys a long life. He becomes free from all his sins. Markandeya Purana is the seventh among all the 18 Puranas. Listening to it helps a man to atone for all the sins committed during the period of 100 crore kalpas. The virtues attained by listening to Markandeya Purana are equivalent to the virtues attained by making donations at Pushkar or by studying all the Vedas. Gemini replied, "O birds, you have enlightened my mind by narrating the tales of Markandeya Purana and have made it free from all sorts of confusion. May the Almighty God bless you. May you enjoy a long life free from all the diseases." Saying like this, Gemini went back to his hermitage. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.